Hello and welcome to today's Mind Your Career program. My name is Adam Sylvain and I work with the Alumni Career Development Team here at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar entitled Reimagining Retirement, Career and Lifestyle Options to Explore. Today we will hear from alumna Daisy Swan. Daisy has been a career and executive coach for almost 30 years, helping clients discover and be their most authentic and productive selves. She has been quoted in articles on negotiation, dealing with difficult office politics and bosses, dating while unemployed, career transition, and work-life balance at girlboss.com, Business Insider, Huffington Post, Christian Science Monitor, the LA Weekly, the New York Post, LA Yoga Magazine, eHarmony, Yahoo, and many others. She earned her BA in English Literature at Loyola University and her MA in Social Sciences at UChicago. She is a devoted mother of her 22-year-old son and an avid tennis player. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to cede the floor to Daisy.
Great, thanks a lot. I'm so happy to be here. So let me move this out of the way and we'll get started. So I'm going to forward this screen. Hi, everyone. So this is an interesting topic and one that I talk with people, friends all the time. So I want to get started with a little bit of a poll. And so we want to know who's here. So I'm curious to know what you're facing right now. And so, are you in the process of just considering what's coming up for you? Are you already retired? And some of my friends are looking at retirement. Some of them are taking early retirement. Some are really terrified about the prospects of being retired and what that really means. So if you can answer this poll, then Adam will give us some feedback and we'll all know who's here and what's going on. And then we'll hop into all of the information I've been pulling together for you.
Great. So give just a couple more seconds for attendees to register their responses, and then I'll close the poll and share out the results.
Yeah, that's great. There's so many interesting things that I'm going to get to share with you today. So let's see here.
All right. So we have our responses recording, and we've got 51% that are employed full-time. We've got 6% that are employed part-time, 12% currently retired, another 20% that are currently retired but want to be working, and then 10% who are self-employed. So a pretty good spread.
Yeah, that's great. And for that 51% who are working and thinking about this, I applaud you for thinking ahead. Okay, let's get going here. And let's see. I am having a little bit of trouble seeing my arrow. So that's why let's see here. Okay, sorry. Okay, technology. So let's talk about what retirement is for you. Not working as much as you do right now or you used to. Thinking about what it is that you want to do, doing whatever you want to do, when you want to do it. A lot of people talk to me about wanting to do something meaningful in their life. And it was something that they've always thought about and always felt was their passion, but they didn't feel they could do it. So they want to do it in their retirement. So again, this idea of a lot of people like me who work for myself, I love what I do, and I just can't imagine not working. So I do have friends who just love being able to travel and see people all over. So think about what this means for you. So we know that the traditional retirement picture um, had looked like going off and playing golf and mahjong or bridge all day. And maybe, for some people that is the case. But we have this new paradigm now of, a different kind of old age. We have old age, and then we have older age, and then we have senior age, right? So we're looking at a new kind of way of doing life. So what is that new older age? So you can join AARP at 50, right? And now we're fit, we're active. I play tennis with people who are in their 70s and they whoop me. So, these are people who we're people who are going to be living longer in many cases, and we're technologically savvy. We've been working using technology like what we're doing right now. We've gotten used to it. With health, many people are educated. They know how to live a good life. They know how to keep their brains fit. These are people who are getting out there and building a business or being involved in politics, local or national. I know my friends and I are always talking about where to live. I'm very blessed to live in Santa Barbara, which I absolutely love. It's not exactly an inexpensive place to live, but I've figured it out. So, we're thinking about how we want to do this next phase of our lives. I know when my son went off to college and my life changed so much, I started really thinking about, wow, he doesn't have to be the main focus of my life now. What am I going to do that's really meaningful for me? And I was working all the time, which is very meaningful to me, but, I don't want to make that my full focus. So, that's when you really start thinking about, what is this next time in life for me, and where do I want to do that? So it's we're faced with this idea of dreaming up a new life. So here's just a few things. Maybe you've already thought some of these things up, but I've done some research, and certainly I do a lot of thinking and talking with clients. Now that we have this remarkable thing called Airbnb, more people are renting their homes, and they get on the road and they do things that are really meaningful to them. Maybe you're one of the people who thought, wow, I'd love to do Peace Corps sometime. Or like a friend of mine has her own business, and she did a program where she went and did some volunteering and in Turkey. And I found this one location online called Cross Cultural Solutions, which has remarkable opportunities to do really meaningful volunteering. You may or may not be aware of places to teach skills that you have. You can, it does take some technological savvy, or you can hire somebody, but I'll be doing this. I'll be teaching classes on Teachable. But Udacity, Teachable, Skillshare, there are even more of these video platforms that are going to be available to us to teach things that are important to us. Of course, there's YouTube, and a lot of people do have YouTube channels, so you can teach things that you know how to teach. And along that line, people can develop new skills. Maybe you've always loved gardening and you want to make some money doing that. You can create classes and teach that. In lots of different ways. We have our city college here. A lot of our University of Chicago alums are PhDs or master's degrees, and you can teach at a community college as an adjunct faculty member or a lecturer. So, there are so many things. So, it's really about thinking, what do you see for yourself? What would you really like to use your time doing? I wanted to share some of the other things that I know people do. So creating a consulting business, I know that what I think we have 10% of this group here, this audience, is self-employed, but for those of us who are, stepping out, retiring, you can create your own consulting business yourself. Finding a job in your 60s that's going to be as challenging as you might want it to be, I hate to say it can be difficult to do because there are so many young people coming out. And I know that sounds like ageism, and we can call it that. Okay, another really interesting thing that's shown up on the scene, these maker spaces. They're all over the country. I found this one that's near LA, the Hex Lab Makerspace, or Makerspace New York City are two examples from coast to coast. And these are places where you can go in and learn how to weld. You can learn all sorts of, skilled labor kind of skills. And, I know a lot of people who love to work with their hands, and they didn't get to do that in their white collar professions. So this could be your opportunity to develop something new and start working in a whole different way. Etsy and farmers markets, Craigslist even, and there are other, eBay. These are great places to sell your crafts. Now, I'm talking here about making money and being in retirement. And, I know not everybody needs to make money. You might not make that much money if you're selling something on Etsy, but it's also a way to be involved and to keep your brain fresh and, keep adding something to your life. During the downturn, my clients, I work with clients at all ages of, in all stages of their careers, from new grads to people who are retiring. And, I with the downturn, I started to work with more people who realized, holy cow, I've got to keep making money for a long time. They might have lost a lot of their retirement in that downturn. Clearly the employment situation has really rebounded, but people are also recognizing retirement funds, they're going to have to carry you longer. So developing a career or continuing a career in a new way is a really smart thing to be considering. So I also mentioned here becoming a virtual assistant. Some of you may not have heard of that. I've had a virtual assistant, gosh, for about 15 years. And so I've never met my virtual assistant. And actually she's in LA. But I had another virtual assistant who is in Texas. So these are people who handle all of the back end of your life, answering phones, sending out emails, organizing your emails. It's really remarkable. So there is training online to become a virtual assistant. So if you're one of those people who just loves to, organize other people and can do that, you can do that from your own home and your computer. Your phone. So that can be a great thing. People do really look for good computer skills and online skills to help with that. Sometimes there's also really managing social media. So, so that goes to going back to school to re-career. If you're somebody who likes to learn how the internet works. Maybe you've already jumped in. During that downturn, when we went through that whole shift to being more of a digital rather than analog world, it was a, steep learning curve for a lot of us. And a lot of people still have resistance to the digital space. But let's face it, the world is only going to go more digital. E-commerce is only going to grow, and everybody needs a website and somebody to manage it. And content is king. So if you're somebody who really likes to write, somebody who likes to learn about things like this, there are places like, boot camps in all over the country. There's General Assembly. That's a big one, where you can re-career in these ways, understanding data. We're becoming obviously a very data-driven world. Well, we haven't become, we are. And knowing how to understand that information and do something with it is king. So there's lots of ways to re-career and learn new things. So I want to, and I'm going to be sharing more information about that. Let's see here. So here's the deal. Dreaming things up, getting a sense of what you really want takes time. So, this is similar to when you're trying to figure out your career. You need to know, who are you? And, what do you love to do? And so these questions are not necessarily different than what I would be asking you if you were just starting out. What are the skills you love to use? And, hopefully this is a time where you can really start to say, I want to use these skills in a way that's really, really central to me. Focusing on the causes and issues. This is a time in life when we're really thinking about our legacy. What do we want to be known for? What do you want the stories to be that people are telling about you as you're, winding down? So thinking about that vision, it does take time. And I actually have a whole series of questions that I offer as what I call a deep dive discovery worksheets. And I have those on my website. And if you'd like to work with those, you can go to my website. It's daisyswan.com, and there will be a pop-up, and you can sign up there, and you'll get my my newsletters, and I offer retreats and classes that are going to be coming up. I'm developing some really interesting classes that I'll be offering through Teachable, but I work with people one-on-one. But anyway, it is really important to take the time and really process these things. So some of the things you would be thinking about are your criteria and really prioritizing them. As I was saying, I talk with my friends a lot about, well, where in the world do you live if you don't want to burn through all of your money so quickly? Is Santa Barbara the place? I don't know. I love to play tennis. Is being active, being in nature something really important to you? Like I live here in town and I can walk everywhere. That became really important to me after living in Los Angeles for about 27 years. I started to feel like, whew, I don't want to be in this traffic anymore. It's just too stressful for me. It's really interesting. There are so many different ways to create a life, depending on how open to new experiences you are. So, maybe you are somebody who wants to live in a motorhome. I mean, that looks really appealing to me sometimes, to just get out and explore. You know, and people do that in so many different ways. I thought I would share how another client started to figure things out, and I also wanted to share one of the pitfalls that I've heard. A client of mine was successful as a producer, you know, Los Angeles, 30 years of being a producer, and, you know, really pulling together hundreds of people to create a production, a film production. And so he had not contacted me. He thought, well, you know what, I'll get a project management certification, PMI, through PMI, and you know, with that certification, I'll be able to work anywhere. And so I can work for construction teams, and I can work for engineering firms, whatnot. Well, he started applying to places with his 30 years of film production and his PMI, and, you know, no takers. Which, you know, and then he came to me, and you know, I had to explain, sadly, that he's spent all that time getting that certification, time and money. And really, the thing with his experience is, you know, there are plenty of people who have the experience that really fits with those jobs. So I wouldn't want you to go off and start investing in education that's not going to give you the kinds of jobs that you're really looking for. The great thing was that as we continued to explore him and you know, what was going on, his wife was retiring, but he wanted to keep working. And as we kept talking, it turned out that he had all these people asking him for his beer mustard. And so he ended up really deciding to put his energy into, you know, putting his mustard into jars, creating a branding system, you know, really getting his website going, finding places to distribute. So it turned into a whole business, which was really exciting and fascinating for him, which is great. Another client of mine has decided after 25 years to leave her teaching career, and she's actually taking a leave of absence, but animals are her thing, pets, in particular dogs. And so she really decided that she was going to go all in becoming a dog trainer and look into developing an animal rescue sort of facility where animals could be out and about, so on a nice natural property. So she's able to do a leave of absence. If that's something you can do, a sabbatical, a leave of absence, and go try something out, you know, check out your criteria. Would that be something that could work for you? Okay, so some of the really cool things that are out there. Encore.org has been happening, gosh, I don't know, it's probably about 15 years maybe. I'm not sure when they started. And there are really fascinating things that they do, and they offer fellowships to help people who are doing really inspiring things in the social realm, and you know, helping with learning initiatives, mentoring programs, so many different things. You know, these are some places where you can get some money to do what you want to do. AARP, of course, I mean, they really do have great resources. I know a lot of us were sort of like, oh, I don't want to join AARP. I don't feel like a senior. The SBA has excellent resources, and you can, of course, apply for loans there if you're wanting to get a business up and running. And SCORE, that may be a place you want to volunteer, or you can get advice about getting your business going. So you can, I know Adam's going to say this, but I can share these slides with you so I can share these resources. So again, here's Encore.org's handbook. And Mark Friedman, who started Encore.org, and by the way, I used his resources extensively when I was writing my master's thesis. He's been all about intergenerational work, how we can, as seniors, mentor youth, and the tremendous benefits of doing that. The Retirement Boom is a good book, but gosh, there are so many books out there, too many to list here, on retirement and options. So, it's worth it to do the research. I love the Strengths Finder 2.0, and I use that with all of my clients. It's an interesting book that has a list of 34 strengths that have been identified. And so if you purchase this book, you'll have a link, a code at the back of the book to use to go online and use this assessment, and you'll get an interesting report with your top 5 strengths. And so that can really point to, if you're not using those or other ways that you would want to use them, it'll really help you understand you more, which is really what's at the heart of all this. These magazines, great resources. I'm sure you've seen them before, with lists of best places to live, to retire, new different kinds of things that you can be doing. One Money magazine article I read last year was about this woman who was a yoga teacher, and she was like, 90 years old. I just love that. So idealist.org, great resources, and maybe there are specific nonprofit job websites that you know of for your area, but that's a good one to start with. Now, this is a really cool thing, this consortium of universities that I note here. This is just one specific one for the Washington area, Washington, D.C. area. But I found that there are all sorts of places where if you want to re-career and really experience a whole new learning, I mean, we're University of Chicago alums, so there are all of these continuous care retirement communities, and so many of them are actually located on university campuses. So there's the Longhorn Village in Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is probably one of the most popular places to relocate to right now. Here's one in Arkansas, the College Square at University of Central Arkansas. University of Michigan has an independent living center for seniors. I just think all of these look really interesting. Duke University has one on their campus, Oberlin, Dartmouth, and you actually can take courses free of charge, and you can do volunteer or internship work as well. So, I mean, I think that is really a benefit for those of us who are learners. Let's see, what was the other one? This nationalservice.gov is really a beautiful thing if you're interested in doing service. And let's see. Well, I'm kind of a seeker. I'm curious in all sorts of different ways of living life, and co-housing, I mentioned this to some friends and they were sort of like, I'm not sure about that. But I think this is really interesting, and I noticed that there's actually a conference in Portland, of all places, of course, June 1st and 2nd. And so co-housing is this, I think it's probably going to become more popular for the aging population, because people don't want to go into senior housing or assisted living that doesn't feel really right for them. So co-housing is an opportunity to live with other people, very well might be good friends who you want to live with, and setting up kind of a commune of sorts, but it's not maybe what we think of as a commune. So anyway, it's worth investigating. And the seniorlist.com, I think that's a interesting and valuable list to look at for resources. So I've delivered a lot of information, and we're at the half hour, and I know that we really wanted to allow everybody to ask their questions, and we can have a little bit of a dialogue here. So what questions do you have? And of course, there are no wrong questions. So let's do that, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have not submitted your questions yet, please utilize the questions box to submit your questions. And to get us started, I would be remiss if I didn't tag on here and mention too that there are lots of ways to engage as an alum of the University of Chicago as you approach this transition as well. So if you have knowledge to share with the alumni community, hosting, speaking at a webinar like this one, or mentoring fellow alumni and students are all other opportunities that I would love to mention as well. And please reach out to me if I can share any more information. But yeah, to get us started with our Q&A, I wanted to ask Daisy, what would you say are the first step that someone can take, particularly early on in their career when maybe retirement feels far off? What's kind of the first step that they can take to start to investigate some of these options?
Um, well, I think it's always important. Uh, and well, first, I just want to clarify your question, Adam. Are you asking about like if I'm in my 20s and I'm thinking about retiring? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Or
right. So if retirement is still far off, but understanding that there's a long way to go to sort of build maybe that financial foundation, and
sure.
yeah, obviously a lot of things that'll happen before you approach traditional retirement age. Yeah, what are some early steps you can take to sort of decide how you'll want to yeah, create that retirement plan that will be personally meaningful?
Well, I think it's an ongoing process. I mean, look at how life has changed in the last, gosh, 10 years. Um, I think of how much life has changed since I was in my 20s. So, we're biological changing beings, right? So things are changing all the time. So keeping that in mind, I think, developing that nest egg, starting early. I'm so happy my son has started squirreling away money, and he's only 20, almost 23 now. So, yes, that's first and foremost. But all the way along through career and life, I think it's so important, and I know that so many people don't do this because I work with them. Um, it's not knowing who you are. It's not paying attention to a bigger picture of where you're going in your life. And so a continual process of checking in and revamping that vision. I just think that's really important.
Great, thank you. So our next question, I have an attendee who is looking to downshift in their career and wants to become an analyst at age 55, but is having trouble getting interviews, thinking that they may need to stay with their current employer, because it's seeming like no one will hire at their current age. Any advice around that question?
Well, I think if you're talking about being an analyst, I'm not exactly sure what kind you're talking about, but um, doing the work yourself, developing your skill set. If it's analyzing, let's say, portfolios, analyzing companies to be able to recommend for investment. Do your own work. Become top-notch at that skill set. Maybe you can develop portfolios for people if it's that kind of analyst. But yeah, it's tough to really make a major career change. And at that point, I mean, quite honestly, as a full-time employee. But on the other hand, if people know you and you use your network well so that you're really selling yourself to them and you don't have to do a hard sell, so to speak, if you can show your skill set and your professionalism so that they don't feel like they're taking on a completely newbie type of person, then maybe that really is possible. So, I never like to say, no, it can't happen, but I do like to manage people's expectations. So, having really top-notch skills, maybe taking some classes, whether they're online or at like UCLA, we have extension. It can be done, but your network is really going to be what serves you.
Great, thanks. And I did get a little bit of clarification from the person who posed that question, and they said that they would be staying in their current industry but moving to a more junior level position. So kind of more of a situation of moving into a position that they may be considered overqualified for. So great. All
Yeah.
right. So
And I'll just say that I know people oftentimes say, I just want to do something different, and it's okay for me to take that step back. And while you and I know that that's genuinely the case, a lot of employers are just so hesitant to take on people who are overqualified because they don't feel that you're going to stay, and that once you get a taste of this, you're going to move on. So if you can convince them otherwise, great. But again, that's using your network. That's what's going to make the difference.
Great, thank you. We have another attendee who's interested in what you shared about virtual assistant opportunities.
Yeah.
Is there a website or any resources around virtual assistants that you would recommend?
You know what? I should have pulled one up and I didn't. If you just Google how to become a virtual assistant, you will find lots of resources. Absolutely. There are so many different ways to do that. And you know what? This is another thing that I thought of when I mentioned that. I know a lot of people love to organize, and especially these days when organizing has become a big hot topic. And there's all sorts of things on Netflix and whatnot, Marie Kondo. Um, so there's, and professional organizing is a really big field. And for those of you who do like that sort of thing, like for example, there are downsizing services and services that support seniors. And we know that that's one of the largest demographics we have, right? So there's a lot of opportunities. I know right now we're hiring somebody to help my mother downsize, so she's moving into an assisted living facility. So there's the Association of Professional Organizers, and so that's something that you can look up to is professional organizing.
Great, thanks. And we actually had another attendee share a resource, zirtual.com, zirtual.com, I guess is a virtual assistant company that might be worth exploring. And I'll be happy to share a link to that resource in the post-event email. So thanks for the.
That's great.
Great. So our next question is related to the retirement communities in or surrounding college campuses. The attendee was a little unclear on whether they were comprised of centers for extended learning, or do they incorporate any types of housing nearby? Is there any more you can share about those opportunities that you discovered?
Well, some of them do have like There's Rivers Run at Rochester. So Rochester Institute of Technology. Um, they have an independent living facility, and then they also have an enriched living. I'm not sure what that means. And then there's also a nursing home. So, so oftentimes these places have continuous care retirement communities. And some of the other ones will have things like actual on-campus housing, I believe. So this is going to take more research on your part. But the continuous care retirement communities, for some of you who don't know about that, so if you join one of these communities, and they're beautiful. We have several in Southern California and Irvine, and I think Thousand Oaks are some that I'm familiar with. So it's like you can buy a home on this huge, community property, and you're independent living. It's an over 55 kind of community. And then as your needs change, let's say you need more assistance, then maybe you would move into assisted living. And then down the road, maybe you need other kinds of care as if your health declines. So in that way, the community of people. So it's not like you're, just living in a city and or a town and don't have a community around you. So but in terms of the actual campus facilities, you'll need to do a little more research there.
Great. Have another attendee who is almost 62 and afraid to leave current job because they're not old enough yet for Medicare. Are you aware of any good options for pre-Medicare health coverage, or any recommendations or advice in that situation?
No, I don't know about that. In terms of wanting to leave. I mean, I'm self-employed. If that's what you're thinking about, moving on to work for yourself. I've been doing Covered California, and that's one of the benefits of what we call Obamacare. As a self-employed person, it made such a difference in my life to be able to be covered with insurance without being employed. It's one of the big frustrations to me is that we don't have more options, and somehow employers get to hold on to people because of that health insurance. But so I don't have another recommendation for that. Sorry.
All right. So we had another attendee who had a question similar to one of the early attendees with, finding jobs. Now they're about 55 years old and kind of looking to find something, perhaps part-time that they may be overqualified for. She specifically was curious. She doesn't have maybe a network that this person can really tap into. Do you have any recommendations maybe on, as a senior, in that position, 55, looking for a job to maybe carry yourself into retirement, how to maybe grow that network, or places to look if you don't have those people kind of at your disposal already?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I work with clients on this all the time, so you're not alone, and I'm sure lots of people on this webinar would like to know the answer to that. Um, I think we have things like LinkedIn for this purpose. I think LinkedIn is really remarkable. It's daunting to a lot of people. So developing an online presence there is really important, and putting together that profile in a way that really is genuine to you is really important. And I work with my clients on that all the time. I know, I think, Adam, you have a program that's coming up on that in a couple of months or something, on developing a LinkedIn profile. So how do you do that? It's reaching out to people who maybe do things that you're thinking about doing, and very politely and genuinely asking them how they've gotten started, or asking for advice. I think volunteering in your area can be a great way of developing a network. So, it depends on what it is that you're thinking about doing, but I know it's so easy to sort of put your head down and keep working at what you're working at, but really making the intention to meet people in different scenarios so that you can expand that community for yourself, your network, is really important. And so there are, conferences. If you can do a search for conferences, there's things like Eventbrite. I think you can search conferences using that to see if there are any things in your area or in your industry area that you're interested in. Or, Google conferences and with the industry area. Some people are not comfortable going to conferences. I personally love it because there is such a cross section of people to meet. And then, now we have meetup.com, which has all sorts of resources. And, I know, let's say for women in technology, there are meetups for that, or, people who are in media. I mean, there's so many different topics. They have thousands of meetups. But, there's so many ways of meeting people. And if you really just think of it as meeting people instead of working on your network, maybe that will even help you. So those are just some broad strokes.
Great. Thanks for mentioning that LinkedIn webinar coming up. It's actually later this month on the 30th. So if there are others on the call who want some advice on how to put your best foot forward on that platform and how to leverage it for maybe a late career transition like this, that would be worth tuning into on May 30th, also at 12 Central. And that's all about writing a LinkedIn profile, but also there'd be an aspect of that webinar on how to network and do some outreach on the platform as well. So do encourage you to tune into that. And this is really great. We have another attendee who is chiming in with a little bit of help for the attendee with questions regarding healthcare options prior to Medicare. COBRA, may be available for up to 18 months of coverage. So that might be something worth looking into. Thank you to the attendee who shared that recommendation. So it looks like we have two more questions. So we have one: any tips for continuing education in the early years as you prepare for retirement?
Continuing education. Well, I mean, there are so many places now. It's so fantastic to be able to learn. Here we are on this platform. So as I had mentioned, for example, I'll be offering classes on Teachable starting later this summer. So Teachable is a great place to look. There are things on Skillshare. Coursera is a great place to look, Udacity. These are all what they call open source sort of locations. So, but some of my clients who have been learning about data science, I actually did have a client I worked with for several years as he made a transition starting at 45. Very, very bright guy who had been a screenwriter. And that wasn't really coming to fruition for him. So he decided to go into data science. And he did extensive coursework through UCLA Extension on data science, learned SQL and a whole variety of other languages through General Assembly. And but there are all these boot camps now for things like that. So, whatever the resources are, even locally for you that might have extensions, and community colleges are a great place to look. I know that UCLA has a a particular program for seniors, but I know you're talking about earlier in your career, getting continuing education. There, I can't encourage you enough to make use of all of the things out there to keep your skills up. And because there are so many resources online and, through associations, if there's, like I was mentioning, the professional organizing, or let's say meeting planning. The Meeting Planning Association actually has a certification to become a certified meeting planner, just like if you wanted to be in human resources or, grant writing, which, by the way, you can be a grant writer for your entire life and you'll have work because everybody needs a good grant writer. So your extension schools and community colleges have certification programs, and you can make use of those.
Great. Actually, it's a great segue into our last question, which is reaching back to one of the options that you mentioned during the presentation was exploring teaching courses at a community college as an adjunct professor or lecturer. The question is just whether you mentioned specifically community colleges, but would that option be available at teaching at a regular private college or university as a part-time lecturer, adjunct professor? Any specific reason you focused on the community college?
Well, I was mentioning community colleges because they will consider people who have only a master's degree versus a PhD. I know I was approached about teaching some courses or collaborating on some courses at USC, and unfortunately I don't have a PhD. I've done enough continuing education, it feels like, to have a PhD, but I do not have those initials behind my name. So a master's degree, and it really depends on the place that you want to connect with. Certainly, like, for example, an MFA, if you're going to, if you want to teach on a college campus or a university campus, an MFA for writing or the arts would be enough. But for many other areas, you need to have a PhD. But a master's does carry the weight of the credential on community campuses.
Great.
Are you there? Adam, all of a sudden you went away.
Oh, sorry. Back again. Sorry. Thank you, Daisy, for sharing all of these wonderful options for exploring meaningful retirement. I want to thank everyone for participating. And I want to call attention for those who are interested in even more on this topic. We do have a webinar upcoming on Tuesday, May 28th, titled "When What You Do Is No Longer Who You Are: Strategies for Later Career Transition." So that'll be another webinar kind of exploring how we kind of assess and evaluate what retirement means for us. So I hope that you can keep that one on your radar as well. We'll also be back next Thursday, May 16th at 12 Central Time for a webinar on solving career burnout, how to get re-inspired. Join us and learn strategies for reevaluating your values and priorities so that you can become re-engaged in your current work. Also on Tuesday, May 21st, the following week, we'll be hosting a live online industry networking hour. So we had folks attending today asking questions about growing your network. So this is a great opportunity to join us. You can join us from laptop, phone, tablet, or any mobile device, and network with alumni peers in industries such as government and nonprofits, teaching and academia, finance, science and tech, and higher education. So I invite you to register for these and all of our upcoming programs of interest at careers.uchicagoalumni.org/events. Once again, thank you, Daisy. Thank you all. Take care and have a great rest of your day and rest of your week.
Thank you.